Maneco 64 here, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. It's Monday, August 19th, 2019. Today I'm talking with Bill Murphy, chairman of GATA, which is Gold Antitrust Action Committee. I've known and been in touch with Bill for probably since 2002 and 3 when I started following the gold market. And Bill has been exposing the central banks, the bullion banks, the mining companies. Hi, Bill. It's nice to have you again. I think I interviewed you a couple of years ago on the channel.
Good to be back, Mario. Thank you.
So can you explain to the viewers why central banks would want to manipulate the gold price, why it's so important to them to keep gold under control?
Well, many people know many years ago it was rigged at $35 an ounce. Everybody knew it was rigged then. It's been a big deal in the United States ever since. And basically, it's pretty simple. You know, if gold goes up, it's generally thought of as bad. Even Paul Volcker, former Fed chairman, said that. Gold down is good. And it has to do with interest rates. Because if gold's going up, people think there's too much inflation, so interest rates go up, so they want to keep gold down. It has to do with the strong dollar. The gold price affects the dollar, many people think, so they want gold to always be in control and reflect that everything is well. And they've been doing it, and they got in the habit of doing it, and it just goes on and on and on. And the same thing is true with silver, because you can't rig gold without silver because it would look too awkward.
What about your background? I know you played professional football as well, and then you went into trading. Can you tell us a little bit about your background in the markets?
Yeah, I have a commodity trading background with Shearson and Merrill Lynch. That's where I met Ray Dalio, the famous hedge fund manager, the biggest one in the world. And I was there, and I was involved with Ray for 5 or 6 years back in the 70s and early 80s. To assist him in every way I could to help Bridgewater get going. And so I had a extensive commodity background. I've been a fermentable trader at some points in my career. And so I know a lot about the commodity markets, have been there, done that. And that's how I came onto the idea when I saw how it was trading, that the gold market was rigged.
Yeah, I remember because I started out in the markets in the late 80s. I started out in Switzerland. I moved to London in the early 90s, and I became a futures and options broker. I covered mostly bond markets, but when I started buying gold for myself in 2002, I followed gold a lot closer. And I noticed every time at around 1:20 or 1:30 p.m. London, gold price would drop. And I was wondering, why the hell is it doing that? And it was because COMEX opened at that time. And it seemed, and I follow all other markets very closely, and I've never seen a market that did that. So I got suspicions, and I found GATA and also your website, lemetropolecafe.com. And can you tell us a little bit how you noticed that the gold market was rigged, and how long you've been at it?
Yeah, that's a good point. We've been at it 20, soon going to be 21 years. I just started my website, the Metropole Cafe, and I follow the gold market closely and know the trading thing as you do in the markets. And all of a sudden, in September of 1998, I realized that it seemed to me that the market was rigged. The long-term capital management, the big hedge fund, blew up. And it was supposedly short either for the Bank of Italy or themselves, some 400 tons of gold. And all the people that had the bullion banks that lent them this gold, or that they were in danger of blowing up part of their portfolios and stuff, because long-term had to liquidate all their positions. So the Fed got these bullion banks together and say, look, we're going to keep the price here. We'll make sure it stays here. We want you to take over their positions, gradually get out of them, and not have to be to cover at the market. And that's how it started. It got worse from there. I saw some other things, and my colleague or a subscriber at the time, Chris Powell, said, well, he was tired of hearing me complain about it. Why don't we do something about it? So we formed GATA in January of 1999, And we've been at it for past 20 years, exposing what these people are doing, and it's beyond obvious that they're involved in rigging the gold and silver markets, and it's the bullion banks, the Fed, the Treasury, the Bank for International Settlements, and some other central banks.
Yeah, and recently we've had some fines on traders spoofing the market. I think personally that's a little bit of a distraction. I think the manipulation is a lot bigger. Like you said, it involves central banks, treasuries, BIS, and it also involves the media, because when I found out from GATA that gold was being manipulated, I used to speak to reporters at Bloomberg in London, because they used to call me to ask about the bond markets and stuff. And then I said, well, can I speak to the person who covers gold, and try to tell the person there about that. And they believed it, but they couldn't really report it. I think that's the other way they manipulate gold. The mainstream financial press never touches the subject. The only time I've seen you on CNBC is when you talk to CNBC Asia, but never see you on CNBC New York or London.
Well, I was on CNBC New York right after GATA started. And as soon as they heard what I had to say, that was it. Banned ever since. And you are so right about the media. I've never seen anything like it. Chris Powell has sent all sorts of stuff to the media. They won't even mention GATA. They won't say he said, she said. That's fine. They will not mention the Gold Antitrust Action Committee. That's what a big deal it is. That's how, when it comes to this, there's no free press whatsoever in America. My colleague Chris Powell said the United States would rather release its nuclear secrets than let what they're doing in the gold market out there. And he's right. It's really extraordinary what a big story this is. And someday the gold market will blow up and everybody will want the answers, like they did in Murray Madoff and Enron and so on. And it's going to be a big story, but it won't be until it blows up, because it can't even be discussed.
Yeah, it's a little bit like other things we're seeing blow up these days, like Epstein and things like that. People knew about it years ago, but it's taken a while. So, yeah, and I wanted to ask you, because I read about GATA in your website that you sued the BIS, but the case was dropped for a technicality. Can you elaborate on that? Because the BIS used to do their accounting in gold, and they've changed that as well.
Well, you have to do it for technical reasons, and our big supporter and follower, brilliant guy, Harvard guy, Reg Howe, is the one who sued the BIS. It was him against, all the money and power in the world.
Yeah.
And they dropped it on a technicality, but pretty much what he showed out there, what was going on, and the BIS was involved in the rigging of the price, and it was a big deal, and he's a very courageous guy, and spoken at a number of our conferences, and we have the highest regard for Reg, and we supported him, of course, in what he was doing.
Yeah, and the BIS, I noticed a few years ago, they CME, which owns COMEX now, the Futures Exchange, they even issued publicly something saying that central banks like BIS and they're getting like a volume discount to trade the futures. So can you tell us how these bullion banks, central banks, actually manipulate the gold price through the futures and the cash market, so people can understand?
Well, what you're talking about, first of all, in the CME, they get volume discounts. Well, they don't even say they're even trading, and all of a sudden the CME is making a big deal over and over again that these central banks get volume discounts. For what?
Yeah, you only get volume discount if you're trading.
If you're trading, thank you. So anyway, when it comes to manipulating, they've used the futures market on the COMEX in the United States for many years, selling in the paper market, the derivatives market. And then they also have taken physical gold, which we can get into, and hit the market when they want to, and they do it by lease gold or swap gold or take central bank gold that's available to facilitate their paper trading. And right now, the open interest on which is the long and short contracts in the COMEX of gold and silver is historically way high. Gold is 600,000. Silver is not far from its all-time high, even though the price is a pitifully low, below 17.1. And they just go into the market and just start selling. And then they try to, get the speculators out of the market or so on. if I may, I think things changed beginning about 3 months ago in the gold market anyway, where, in my opinion, they're having trouble accessing enough physical supply to do what they used to. They're finally hitting a tipping point in which they can't access enough physical supply to meet demand, which is surged in different parts of the world. And that's why we've just recently had a 3-month run up to gold, up to the high of 1535 and to 1520 resistance, and now they're trying to attack again. If I'm correct, their attack's not going to work this time either. It might get a little more than it has been these past months, but they're in trouble, and the gold price is headed much, much higher.
Yeah, I mean, last year was the biggest amount of gold that central banks bought in 50 years, and they've started this year already buying a lot of gold, especially the Russians and the Chinese. And I remember GATA, you sponsored it was a GATA, was it 2006, Dawson City, a gold conference. And I remember you had a Russian official there, and so I think the Russians, they know all about the gold manipulation, and it's probably thanks to GATA.
Well, what you're talking about, Mario, this is a very big point. It's the central banks outside of the gold cartel that are doing all the official buying. The ones that are in the cartel are trying to keep the gold price down, and other central banks know what's going on and taking them on. And as far as the Russians go, you're so right. A Russian central bank minister spoke about GATA at a conference, and then Andrei Bykov came to our Dawson City conference in 2005, and I'm sure he went back and reported everything he knows, because right after that conference, in a few days, the gold price rose dramatically for the next 9 months. I've had 3 conference calls with Chinese Investment Corporation, part of one of their sovereign wealth funds. The Chinese know all about the manipulation, and they know that the price has been artificially suppressed for many, many years, and they've kept it this way. And now I think it's in the process of like a coiled spring going off. And that's why we've had gold move up so much these past 3 months.
Yeah, and I guess the Chinese and the Russians, they probably don't mind the manipulation because they can accumulate all the physical. But there, like you said, there comes a tipping point where they don't have, the gold cartel doesn't have enough physical to lease and manipulate the price. I personally think that the Bank of England, through the LBMA, is one of the biggest, is like work together with the Fed to manipulate the gold price. I find a lot of times, when I look at the markets, when I get up, when London opens, you see that gold price a lot of times moves down. I see the Bank of England, they hold like 5,000 tons for foreign central banks, even though the UK only has 300 tons. And I think they're a big part of that. What do you think? Do you think the Bank of England is heavily involved?
Well, big time. And of course, this is what helped put GATA on the map. In May of 1999, after we started, they announced in advance they were selling half their gold, and they kept the gold price subdued for 2 years. And they announced what they were going to do in different auctions and so on. And if you want to get the best price for your gold, you don't announce you're going to sell X amount, some 350 tons or whatever it was like that in advance. I mean, you just don't do that to get a higher price. So that's when many people that have followed GATA, like James Turk and so on, of Gold Money, came to realize that GATA was correct, that this thing was being rigged. And you're absolutely right that the Bank of England's been a big part of it, and the LBMA, and it's the money and power.
Yeah, and what do you think of the the European agreement to limit the sale of gold? They started in '99, and they renewed it every 5 years, and they've announced now that they're not going to renew it as of September. What do you think of impact that will have? Does that mean that they're going to start selling, or that they just not selling anymore? Because some people are concerned that that means they're going to start selling again, big amounts. I personally don't think they will.
I don't believe anything the central banks say. That's one thing I've learned over 20 years of doing this. You can't believe anything that they say. That's number one. Number two, if I'm correct, and I may not be, that about this physical gold market that the supply is drying up on them. They have a major problem, and this is why gold has made its big move. People talk about gold moves when the dollar's weak. The dollar's higher than when gold started this move. Gold has already made all-time highs in 73 different countries. The one that's lagging is the United States. But of course, that's what the gold cartel is concerned about. It's a U.S. thing, and they're concerned about the U.S. Gold price in dollars. And so that's why it's one of the other reasons that the gold price is where it is today.
Yeah, and I've noticed like the Chinese yuan price of gold is also lagging, while the British pound, Canadian dollar, Aussie dollar, they're all at all-time highs. But we're told that the Chinese are the ones that manipulate their currency. It's crazy. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, it's very complicated, and the main thing for me is all the gold being all-time highs in all these other countries, and what's going on, what the Chinese are doing with it, in terms of their currency. It's hard to say. They're very mysterious, and they don't let on anything. Of course, we don't let on anything either when it comes to the gold market. So, all I'm very confident about is that these people are buyers: the Chinese, the Russians, many other big league people now, many famous hedge fund managers in the United States, and the bad guy supply is gradually dying up. Can they get a tranche here and there and hit the market? Of course. But they can't sustain it, and that's why gold's been making this big move.
What do you think the policy of sanctions by the U.S. also is helping this? Because people are, other countries are saying we need to get out of depending on the dollar, so we need to have a strong currency. So we do that by buying gold. Do you think that has had an impact as well?
Well, two things that are affecting the gold price now all over the world are these incredibly low interest rates, which are going to zero and negative. It's just beyond comprehension. So it makes gold that much more attractive. And of course, the tariff situation fuels the fear trade in gold. All of a sudden, when of course, the trade situation with China is a joke. It's on, it's off, it's on, it's off, it's on, going on all year. It is so tedious. But when there's real concerns that hit the market and our stock market goes down sharply on a given day or over a period of time, it accelerates what I call the fear trade. People want to own gold, especially at these low interest rates. Yeah,
and the other thing I'm seeing as well in gold is that I've been involved, with a company called Glint Pay. They're based in London, and I think Sprott, they invested £5 million in them. So basically now I can store gold in Switzerland in a Brinks vault and have a debit card, and I actually can spend the gold. And they've launched in the US. So it's not physical, you're not holding it, but it is physical because they hold allocated gold for you. I think that could be something big as well, because younger people like digital things. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I know some of the people involved here in the United States, one in particular, David Sanders, and he's a great guy, and I have the highest regard for him and the people involved in Glint.
Oh, good. I wasn't sure if you heard of Glint. That's good.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so can you tell me, I read in your website about when you sued the Fed about the gold swaps. Can you tell us exactly what happened there?
Yeah, we just tried to get some answers from the Fed about what they were doing when it comes to gold swap operations and to get it out in the public. And, we got, the judge, wouldn't give us the time of day except on one particular issue, and they made, regarding one of the things that we were queried about, and they had to discuss that with us. But aside from that, it's a tough thing to sue the Fed, but we did get someplace, and we made a few waves, and it was worth the effort.
So to sum up our interview, so where do you see the gold market going? I know it's hard to guess when things are gonna. Let's say you used to call it commercial signal failure.
Yeah, still do.
Yeah, And can you tell us who are the big bullion banks that are heavily involved in this, and where you see gold going in dollar terms in the next year or so?
Well, that's a mouthful there. The first thing I can say when it comes to silver, it's all about J.P. Morgan, rigging the market, either for themselves or for the U.S. government. And that's the reason that the silver price, it's the silver gold ratio is above 88. It's just a joke.
Yeah.
Silver price is below 17. I think silver is on its way to 100, but it's got to get through 1750 first and then 21.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a step at a time. Gold, I think's going to make all-time highs in dollars and head towards 3,000. I think we're already underway. The silver price has still got to explode. It's been much more contained than gold, and basically they're going to take on the bullion banks and the rest of the gold cartels we've discussed who have been rigging the price. And I think the process is underway. There's still very little excitement in the United States about gold. It's for various reasons. One, because the stock market never corrects here, and people that have their money in that, keep their money in that. Every time it looks like it's going to go down, it goes right back up.
Yeah.
I think that may have something to do with the plunge protection team, but I think the surprise is going to be how far and how fast the precious metals go up in the next year or two.
Yeah, in the UK here as well, there's no excitement about gold either, even though we've broken the 2011 high here. I think we've been up to 1260 in pounds, and we started the year just below 1,000. So it's been a good way to protect one's purchasing power by having gold. So Bill, I'd like to thank you for joining me and talking about the gold market. And do you want to tell the viewers where they can see your information and your websites?
Yeah, well, they can go to LiTeCoin.com and sign up for a 2-week free trial and see if it's of value. I've been doing it for almost 21 years now, and my colleague Chris Powell, Secretary Treasurer of GATA, does an incredible job putting stuff out there and contacting the press and different people to give GATA exposure. And you can go to his website at our website, gata.org, and sign up for free.
Okay, thank you, Bill, and have a great day, and hopefully we'll talk soon again.
Mario, great talking to you. Thanks for thinking of me.
You're welcome. Take care.